Welcome back, everybody, to the Even Your Dynasty show.
We just got breaking news in.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Even Your Dynasty show. We are going to do a 2026 offseason kind of preview tonight, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about, there seems to be a front runner supposedly emerging, according to Andrew Baggerly, for the Giants managerial search. So we'll talk that, plus I think a few other names have kind of been brought up that are going to be interviewing, but there is a favorite that is kind of out there supposedly. So we'll jump into that kind of on the later part of the show. If you guys have any questions that you want to, topics that you guys want us to talk about, other than that, feel free to shoot them in the chat. But other than that, how are you guys doing?
Good. It's even nicer to get closer to being able to say I told you so. If you know, you know.
Yeah. We lost Ricky. Well, he'll probably be on in a second. He'll jump back in. I had mentioned to these guys earlier that if Hundley does in fact get the job, had I been somebody that smoked cigars, I probably would have lit one up right at the beginning of that video. But we'll time will tell on that one. We still
I'll light two up for you, brother.
Oh man. But anyway, so today what we're going to talk about, as I kind of mentioned, we're going to jump on where the Giants stand, kind of both payroll wise. We're going to go over kind of who's arbitration eligible. We'll look at the Rule 5 draft guys, the guys that are eligible, some decisions they'll have to make there. Just kind of a preview for the offseason for everybody. Well, we've already kind of discussed a lot about needs, and we've mentioned a few targets. We're going to dive way deeper on the targets as we get to the actual offseason, when the playoffs wrap up. But just as a kind of a precursor, we're going to just kind of prep everyone here with where they stand. So I think the first thing that is just important for everyone to be aware of is simply just where they stand on payroll. I mean, at the end of the day, like, that's going to dictate a lot of what they can do or will do. Let's pop Ricky back in here. So the first thing is the competitive balance tax payroll, the first threshold where they would end up having to pay that is going to be set, or it's estimated at $244 million for 2026 for next season. As it stands, and this is going off of COTS, which is like Baseball Prospectus and all those guys. If you include the 5 arbitration eligible players that the Giants have, assuming they tender contracts to all 5 of those guys, which we'll run through each of them and the decisions they have to make there, they're sitting currently at $184.5 million estimated if the arbitration numbers all line up. So that's kind of where they're at. They've got, approximately $60 million to work with. Everybody keep in mind, they didn't go over the threshold last season. So they've already reset that. There's not going to be any kind of repeater tax for them this year if they go over. There's also, if they sign any players with qualifying offers, last year when they signed Adames, they lost a second and a fifth along with $1 million in international bonus money. This season, each qualifying offer player, it's only 1 pick. So they would lose their second round pick if they signed one guy, second, and then they would lose their third if they signed a second guy. And they lose $500,000 per player with a qualifying offer. So that'd be kind of the first thing to be aware of going into the offseason. You guys got anything you want to add to that before we jump into the ARB guys?
No.
Cool. All right. So as of right now, the Giants have 5 players, and I'm pulling the names right now. They have 5 players that are arbitration eligible. I think you have varying. Actually, one of them I would say is probably a pretty safe bet that I don't think they're going to tender him a contract personally, but you never know, I guess. The first one is Joey LaCasey. I think that one's going to be probably a lock, and you guys give me your opinions here. He's set for about $2.25 million. Do we agree? Like, he'd probably be, I don't see any reason they wouldn't give him. He's ARB3.
Yeah, I think Lucchese is a given, especially since Buster kind of name dropped him as well.
Yeah.
So
He was very good against left-handed hitters.
Yeah.
Kind of that awkward motion. The bullpen is already very thin as it stands. I don't think they can afford to lose him. So yeah, I think he's going to be one. Patrick Bailey, I mean, whether Dan likes it or not, he's super 2 eligible. He's going to probably be given as well. $2 million. He's not quite, he's not at that spot payroll wise where they're going to probably look to drop him or anything like that or move on. So Bailey is a given. JT Brubaker, he's an interesting one. He's ARB3 as well. But they seem to like him kind of from what I've heard. And he did have a couple decent outings. So, I mean, I don't know if he's a guarantee, but he's estimated about 2 million as well.
Yeah, with him, it'll be kind of interesting to see how they approach the offseason, because with Lucchese, it makes a ton of sense because, obviously, like every team does, they definitely need the lefties. I do see them trying to roll forward with him, probably Gage and Eric Miller in the pen. I know 3 lefties is pretty unique, but when you have good lefties and not knowing, what Eric Miller's health looks like next season, it does make sense to just invest in those 3. With Brubaker, it could get a little interesting during the off season, just given how they end up fitting in the rest of the right-handed pitchers, especially with all the young guys that are coming back next season. Like Birdsong and Wizenhunt and all these guys, and seeing who they may try to squeeze into the pen out of the guys that don't end up making the rotation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that point. And don't mind my reaction. I got the game on at the same time. I'm going back and forth, and Detroit just got nabbed at the plate.
Yeah. We were trying to hold this off until the Mariner game ended, the Mariners-Tigers game, but it just keeps dragging. So we were like, we're not going to be starting this show at 10 o'clock. So we'll just get it going. So hopefully, I don't know who everybody's rooting for. I mean, I like Scooble, so like I wouldn't mind Detroit. They've always kind of had it bad in my lifetime, other than as far as not being able to actually win championships in that city. But also, like, I live in the Seattle area, and as much as I can't stand the Seahawks, like they have had it horrible with the Mariners for so long that I'm kind of like, out of pity, I'd like to see them do well. It's kind of like the Tiger. It's kind of like the Lions a few years ago, where it's like, who could even dislike this team? Like, but hopping back on topic here, the next person on the list. Now, this is going to be a controversial one, but the money makes it a little interesting. Ryan Walker is ARB1 eligible. Again, $2 million. It's just barely. It's a little over. It's like 2.5 the rookie contract pre-ARB number.
After what we saw this past season, that's 1.9 mil too much.
I think if they could put him back in like the 6th or 7th inning, I feel like he does fine in that role. But I swear to God, if he's closing games next season, that would be brutal.
You can put him in the 5th or 6th inning for the Weichuan Dragons of Taiwan. I'm sick of that dude.
Yeah, okay. So my opinion is that I think that he ultimately is going to get a contract. He's going to be back. I don't think with the state of the bullpen, I don't think they can just afford to dump him. Unfortunately, if they had a stronger bullpen in place already, I could see it. If they get really aggressive, sign a couple dudes, some guys really break out in spring training that they feel really good about in the pen. Maybe they put Birdsong in the pen. Maybe guys like Trent Harris, Braxton Roxby, to be heard from later on the show. Some of those guys do well. I could see it maybe as like a spring training trade, but I don't think they're gonna like non-tender him.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think he does get tendered for the reasons you described. The bullpen was in a dire place this past season, so you can't really afford not to, like you mentioned. But just know he's on a thin leash.
Yeah, for sure. And then the last name, and I think this is the one, along with like Brubaker, this is the other spot where they could save a little money. Andrew Kisner is ARB3 eligible. I mean, it's only about 1.7 mil. I could see kind of that going both ways. I could see that being a non-tender. I could see them saying, yeah, we can upgrade it, backup catcher. We'll go a different route. Maybe they feel good about maybe they feel good about Jesus Rodriguez. Maybe they just decide, hey, we can get a guy on a rookie deal that we're willing. Maybe they run it back with guys like Sam Huff and Jesus and let them compete. I could see a few scenarios playing out there. So that's one where I could see him getting dropped. I could also see a situation where the team is like, it's 1.6 mil. It's not that much. We'll just tender him a deal. And if we have to cut him loose or trade him in spring training, so be it. I could see that playing out as well. But that's the one name that I could really see being the big non-tender candidate, because he really did not do anything this past year. So, yeah, I think that's the easy one.
Yeah, I would agree on that one too. I mean, it just makes all the sense in the world to just not move forward with Kisner in the future, because you saw what they did with Jesus Rodriguez. I mean, they kind of went out of their way to bring him up at the end of the season, not even to really be a part of the team, but just to catch the staff and like get a head start on spring training. So, I mean, the writing's kind of on the wall there. And I mean, it's totally possible that they just bring in another cheap veteran backup. I mean, you're not getting like really plus defense out of him, and the bat's definitely giving nothing. So, yeah.
Yeah, like you said, I think Jesus Rodriguez is a lock to take over that role going into spring at least. And plus, I mean, you've got a couple guys in the system that are kind of flying through. Kavanaugh's one where you could probably see him in Sacramento as early as like end of next season, maybe the following one. So reasons for that, I mean, it makes sense to roll with a Bailey Rodriguez duo going into spring, and then bring in, like you mentioned, a veteran guy for the low.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I think if you right now they're estimated about 59.5 mil. If we think maybe they drop Brubaker and Kisner, you got about another 3.5 ish. I mean, I'm not going to go down to the dollar, but you got about another 3.5 ish. So that could get you up to about 63 mil. So that is, a good amount of space. I've seen a few people kind of mention already in the chat, Tyler Rogers, Robert Suarez. I think there's some other names. I saw Jeff mentioning like David Robertson or a few other bounce back guys, because you're going to probably need to get a little creative. You can't just get a bunch of expensive guys, because you do need to address the rotation as well. They're in a spot where they're probably not going to fill 100%. They're going to have to take a little bit of a leap of faith with some young arms, I anticipate, but they are in a spot where they can certainly afford probably comfortably 3 arms at least. Like that cost a chunk of change, I would say.
It's funny because I was on social, I forget if it was like Instagram or TikTok or something, and somebody did like an off-season preview for the Giants, like looking towards the free agency class, and you just have a bunch of fans in the comment section saying, "Oh, with what money they're overpaying for Devers and Lee and Chapman and Adamas." I'm like, you freaking idiots.
Oh my god,
guys, the Giants are not a poverty franchise. Like I cannot stress this enough. And a lot of people can say like, "Oh, we're not going to go over the tax. We're not," and I think there's some validity to that. I mean, I never assume the team is willing to go over the tax, but I do think that they're not going to be, 30 million under the tax either. I do think they're going to push this closer to that number at the very least. If they feel like there's an opportunity to go over, and maybe they don't feel like there is with the guys that are on the free agent market, maybe they're sitting there where they're going to go, hey, we're going to sit on this. And then next year when we have guys like Robbie Ray as a free agent and you've got a little bit of money coming off the books, they might then be willing to go splurge and, chase that white whale of like Tariq Skubal or something in free agent. That might be the kind of guy that the team decides he is a guy we are willing to blow past the threshold for a year or two to go chase. Oh boy, we got action in Seattle. So I could see that being a situation. But yeah, I mean, too many people act like the team is like a poverty franchise. They talk about the team like they're a small, medium market team. And I get it. Their payroll has not 100% always matched up with the, how rich the franchise really is. But they still tend to be upper half to top 10 in the league in payroll almost every year. So I don't think they're going to sit there and be super cheap about it either. The other part of that is, and obviously there was a big noticeable jump after they traded for Devers. And if you have Eldridge next season, that's going to be more excitement for fans. The other part of this is attendance jumped by, I believe, about 275,000 this last season. If you look at 2024 attendance and 2025 attendance, they jumped by like 275,000 fans, and they were nearing the 3 million threshold again. I think when they sell out every game, they were around 3.2, 3.3-ish. They were pushing close to 3 million again. And with all the, with Adames and Devers, and if they have Eldridge and, even Chapman and guys like that, like I do anticipate, even if they don't sell out every game, I anticipate this being a 3 million plus draw next season. And the owners, as attendance is gone, ownership's always been willing to spend more. So that's my 2 cents on the direction of the payroll over the next couple seasons.
Yeah, I can see them getting to like that 10 mil under range for sure.
Yeah. Okay, what do we have? I see a manager challenge going on. Are they challenging a hit by pitch or?
Robles just took one off the knuckles and he was attempting to bunt.
Ow.
That's why I was making the face, because it was just.
Yeah. Ooh. Victor Robles, for anybody that doesn't know, look up Victor Robles' John Boy.
It's a good one.
He is the guy that in a minor league game earlier this year got suspended for 10 games because he threw his bat at the pitcher. And while I do not condone ever using your bat as a weapon in a major league or on any kind of professional field or non-professional field, I understood the frustration because I think he was on a rehab assignment and he got hit like 6 times in 3 games.
Yeah.
It was brutal.
He's hurt.
And it's almost a guarantee they're going to have to face Cal to end this inning.
Of course.
To get out of it. Unless there's a double play, they will be facing Cal.
Marichal would beg to differ. Facts.
George says, Giants have the money to go way over the tax line. Time to get impact players. Trade Ray, sign 2 starting pitchers, sign 2 relievers. Trade for another established starter. Giants need to invest and we'll sell out. I think the hard part is I'm not sure with the state of the rotation currently that they're going to be able to trade Ray and reasonably fill, because you still have to get all these guys to come in. That's the difficult spot they're in right now. If you could move Ray and get all these guys, I mean, I'm not gonna sit there and cry about it. That's for sure. I'd be like, all right, good for you. Now the one thing is, do you guys have any faith if this team blows by the tax and they're, because you're likely going to be committed past the tax then going into next season? Do we have any faith that this team would be willing to go out and look at Tariq Skubal and actually throw a big offer at him? I don't.
I mean, I don't unless we see otherwise. I mean, they've kind of got to prove that one. Obviously, it's a little bit different with Buster being in charge now, and we only have 1 year to go off of where his biggest investment was a few million for Justin Verlander over 1 year. So we don't really have anything to base it off of, but at least prior to Buster, they were completely against long-term deals for starting pitchers. And, more often than not, that's going to help you out. But then you look at, for every instance of a guy getting hurt and making their contract look bad, I mean, you still have, Kevin Gausman, who could have absolutely helped the Giants out every year since he's left. For the most part, that would have been a good value deal for them because they desperately have needed innings eaters outside of Logan Webb, and they just haven't had that. Just stability in the starting rotation could have gone such a long way had they not been constantly turning over that second spot in the rotation year in, year out. And then even Carlos Rodon, he's bounced back pretty nicely on the start of that deal with the Yankees. So, it's very risky business paying, 30-year-old starting pitchers who likely have most of their best days behind them. We saw that with Johnny Cueto. We got 2 good years out of him, and then injuries caught up to him. His velo tanked, and the Giants kind of had to wait to get out of that deal. And then kind of same thing with Samardzija. So,
in my opinion, there'll be 3 deciding factors for that. One will be obviously how the 2026 season plays out.
Yeah.
Secondly, how the starting pitching shakes up for 2026, because we saw what a crap show that it was this past year, especially, after the first couple months. And then thirdly, if ownership deems that, it's something that they need to consider, they're going to have to tell Buster and Meneisen, hey, here is a blank check. You do whatever it takes to get him, because there are going to be 15 other teams that are going to be, offering the house to him. So you're going to have to not only stand out against your previous season, what is your current pitching rotation, and then stand out against these other teams as well. So I don't know if that's all plausible, but that's essentially what it's going to come down to.
Yeah. I do think the one thing that if we do hear the Giants are in on them, and Buster's invested, I don't think they're half-assing that. We already saw it with guys like Soto and some of the other big names. If Buster's we're not going to get in this bidding war, they just don't get involved. They don't even kick the tires. They don't do anything. They're just nope. And you hear nothing of it right out the gate, just like with a guy like Soto. So, I mean, if Skubal, if you hear the Giants are interested in Skubal early, I mean, even if you don't hear, they might. Adames, there wasn't a whole ton there. I think Heyman maybe mentioned it a little bit, but it was still relatively quiet on that front. More signs were pointing to Ha-Seong Kim than Adames. So, if the Giants do get involved, I do expect Buster to be all in on that. And yeah, I mean, it's tough because they're going to be, like Ricky said, 30-year-old, 7-year contracts or 8-year, whatever he's going to get, 8-year deal. It's not always the best investment, but also if the Giants are looking at it from a, trying to get over the hump thing, trying to beat the Dodgers, trying to, whatever, they're going to need more pitching. They need front end pitching. They need aces that can go shove the Dodgers for 2 games in a series. You're not going to beat LA playing with, Logan Webb is your ace and whatever behind him. I'm sorry. That's just my opinion on them playing against a team like the Dodgers. I just don't. I think that's just a tough draw for them. So, that could be we're trying to get over the hump and be a championship contender type move and pushing their chips in.
Yeah.
So.
The way I look at it is kind of like what Dan was alluding to. It really is going to depend on how this season plays out because one, right now, you kind of have to go after a free agent starting pitcher to add on to what you have with Webb and Ray. Sure. But then after this coming season, Ray is going to be a free agent. So you at least have that money coming off the books. And then this year you can kind of use that to see where you're at with Birdsong, Wisenhunt, Roop, that whole group, and really see what, that looks like. Is Roop going to bounce back and give you a full season now, or is he going to kind of fatigue out late in the season again, because that makes a huge difference. Because if they're just not getting a full season worth of returns on any of those guys, then they might feel kind of forced into that, especially if they make the playoffs in 2026 and feel like they need to follow that up and keep building off of it. Then they might feel like they need to go get that one like front end starting pitcher to kind of push them over the edge.
Yeah, no, for sure. And if they do get a bunch of returns on the young guys, they might just decide we don't need to fork out all that money on that front and use that money elsewhere. So yeah, I mean, for sure, it's gonna be a lot to digest over the season, see where they're at. I personally think like if there's a guy that they actually have a legit chance at getting when it comes to these star free agents, that's probably as good a shot as you're going to get given his ties to the Bay Area. But I mean, you never know. It's hard to predict on that. He who says Gausman looked vulnerable in the second half of his Giants season. That is true. Team started taking his splitter and sitting fastball. There's splitter a lot. There are fears of future arm problems. And you know what? All of that is valid. I still thought at the time and today it was an atrocious decision. And I get the concerns, especially when you look at the money he got. I mean, he got $110 million over 5 years. This isn't a 7 or 8 year deal. It was a 5-year deal at $22 million per, which is barely more than the qualifying offer number.
Yeah.
I cannot defend that at all, especially when you brought back DeSclafani and Wood and those guys. Like, I can't get behind it.
That was the biggest issue, is what was your counter? Your counter was going in the, $2 movie bin at Walmart and shopping for the cheap options and going quantity over quality and saying, okay, we can patch this together with 3 worse options and then have a hole in the front end of our rotation. And, the other thing with these kind of contracts like Gausman's is you kind of want to look into the future a little bit and see how they may age, because if you go and see, this season, I'm going to look to re-sign this guy, and what's going to come up next season, and see if there's like a big name guy, like a Skubal, for example. So you go and sign a guy to a contract this year, that contract might age really well in 2 to 3 years, because the following offseason is followed up by a big-time starting pitcher that just completely resets the market, like a Skubal. So obviously Framber wouldn't be like a great example necessarily, because he's on a little bit of the older side. But, somebody that's maybe a couple years younger that is a free agent this year, that contract might look a lot better in 2 seasons, because Skubal might completely blow up the free agent starting pitcher market.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, I mean, just look at last year this is going to be a perfect example. Last year I was like, hey, there's a couple mid kind of tier guys that I was hoping that they would get, have a chance of getting. And, the Royals were lucky. They were able to get like Michael Wacha on a $17 million per extension where they got him for 3 more years. But I mean, look at the Rangers. They had to pay $25 million a year to Nathan Eovaldi, who was 35. Like, he was going into his age 35 season, and they had to give him 3 for 75. And meanwhile, Toronto's got Gausman on 22 per. I mean, that's like almost as good a deal as Logan Webb's at this point. It's just insane how good that contract has aged for them. So yes, always a risk, especially with 30-year-old pitchers. Definitely understand that. Even back then, I just did not feel like that was smart, because he was a front end guy. Whether you agreed he was a 1 or a 2, whatever, he was still a top 2 pitcher. So, George says, how about Shane Bieber? I can see him being like a Gausman, would not give him 5 years, but maybe 3-year deal. Yeah, I mean, I like Bieber as like a second tier guy.
Mm-hmm.
Bounce back candidate with upside.
For sure.
Guys like him, Gallen, Merrill Kelly, although Kelly's not like a bounce back, but he is older. But in that category of like 2 or 3 year deals, maybe.
Yeah, see, guys like that are good investments for the middle and back end of your rotation, because a team like the Giants, who are trying to push forward and get to the playoffs, it can be kind of a win-win in a way, because you either get the best out of them, and it helps you make the playoffs and make a nice little run, or your team does what the Giants did this year and completely falls apart. And, again, if they do well, you follow the Oakland A's old model and you go and ship them off mid-season and you go and get a quality prospect for them when there's a shortage of good starting pitchers available at the deadline because nobody sells anymore. And then you get a really solid prospect out of them. You look at the haul that they got for 2 relief pitchers this year, when they traded Tyler Rogers and Camilo Doval, and you think of that times a few more if you trade a good starting pitcher, because they're going to have a little bit more value for these teams. So it makes a ton of sense versus a guy like Verlander, who the Giants weren't really in a great position to trade for a variety of reasons, and they're kind of stuck with shitty roster and old starting pitcher taking up a spot that doesn't want to move and isn't easily moved. And then you have him taking up innings from younger guys that you could kind of have audition their way onto possibly next year's rotation.
Drop the mic, Ricky. Drop the mic.
No, nothing against Verlander. It's just those kind of guys, you get yourself into a lot trickier of a situation unless you're actually good.
Yeah, it's a shame that Verlander didn't start the year the way he finished the year.
Oh, for sure.
Because if he would have started the year like that, I mean, aside from the Giants probably having a better record anyway, and maybe they don't sell, but had he started the year that way, and they were in the same position at the deadline, they could have probably gotten something for him that was decent. Because he did finish the year really well. But yeah, yes. I mean, yeah, that's just a horrible spot to be in. Come on, Mariners. You got Raleigh, J-Rod, and Polanco. Just do something. 13th inning. Good Lord. So it's going to be like a Giants Nationals. Just go like 18 innings.
Imagine.
In an elimination game. In a winner take all. They're like calling Brian Wu off the IL, adding him to the postseason roster. Just to
dang. Struck him out, bro.
Yeah. Crazy.
Look who's up. Raleigh Rodriguez Polanco.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at the.
Oh, you're ahead of me. I thought you're ahead of me. I thought you were just guessing. I was like, good guess, bro.
I mean, yeah, it's totally what I was doing.
This guy.
All right. Lastly, when it comes to previewing, the Giants do have a long list of guys here. I'm going to just pull the Jeff Young tweet. I'm not going to read off the whole list, but we're going to just zoom in a bit, and I'm going to just share my screen. I'm going to get your guys' thoughts. Now, keep in mind, everyone, when we sit here and talk about who we could see being guys that they do add to the 40-man to protect them from the Rule 5 draft, it is not always, hey, this is the best prospect on this list. Because you also have to weigh, like, what are the realistic odds that a guy, A, will get claimed, and B, is going to actually stay on that other team's roster all year. Which a lot of these guys, I'm looking at you, Arteaga, or, some of the, guys like him, realistically, Velasquez, Choate, they're not going to stick on a roster. I think Choate's probably the highest risk, just because with pitchers, there is a chance. Position players, it's very rare that a guy skips an entire level and then sticks. My personal opinion, when I look at this list of guys that are A, worth protecting, and B, actually could see them stick on another team's roster, I do think you're looking at maybe Roxby, Bednar, and maybe a guy like Gavello. I could see somebody trying to snag us like a utility piece. And I'm kind of stretching it on Gavello. I don't think he's really going to get selected and end up sticking on a roster all year. So I think the two guys that you'd probably want to really consider protecting would be like Roxby and Bednar. Bednar, I get it. The command has been non-existent for a couple of years now. He tightened it up a bit in the second half this last season. He has closer stuff. Like, his stuff is disgusting. And I think that's one that might be worth it for the team just to protect him for another year and see if they can get him like to that next step. But what do you guys think as far as what we're looking at here?
Well, it the part that sucks is that the three of us, and especially you two, have covered like 8 or 9 of these guys in depth over the past year or two. So
Yeah.
it's like, man, that sucks to risk losing guys like that. But no, I think the two names that you mentioned in particular, being Bednar and Roxby, are like the only ones that probably have a legit chance to get swooped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even a guy like Bertrand, like he's not far off from being a big leaguer, but he just didn't quite get um, up to Sacramento early enough for that. I mean, Juan Sanchez is another guy. We saw him a couple years ago in spring, looked really good, was pretty solid most of the year in Sacramento, and then was out all of last year and kind of fell off the face of the earth for a while there.
was
Otherwise,
hurt here.
yeah, exactly. So he's a guy that I would have normally said, yeah, absolutely, got to protect him. But with him being out all year, it's really hard to say. Teams would really be taking a chance, and that would be like a team like the Rockies, who are just so desperate for pitching. But even then, I don't see that. I would definitely lean more towards the guys you mentioned, mainly just Roxby and Bednar. Bednar's another guy, same thing. Like the Rockies just have, it's just an absolute wasteland for pitching. So they're a team that can absolutely afford to take the chance on a more high upside guy like him. I mean, he's a fairly decent first round pick for a reason. I mean, you could honestly argue he has better stuff than his brother, who was kind of a no-name guy for a long time until he established himself with the Pirates after a couple seasons.
Yeah.
His fastball in particular is like got elite. I think like when you look at the shape of it, it's got like an elite shape, and he's throwing it like high 90s. And then his splitter slider combo, like he has 3 gross pitches that can get swing and misses. He just doesn't know where it's going. Like that's the problem.
Exactly.
And it's like if he figures it out, that might be your closer right there. Like that might be the guy that we've been waiting for. But is he going to figure out? Who knows? I mean, that seems to be most guys that become closers. It's you look at you track their careers in the minors, and people are having the same discussions that we're having right now. It's like, well, if this guy ever figures it out, he'll be a nasty closer, and some do, and a lot don't. So, we'll see what happens there. Juan Sanchez, he was a guy last offseason. I was like, this is a guy that I could see being in the pen. I thought he was going to be one of the in the Giants bullpen as that second lefty, and then he got hurt. I still don't even know what the injury was. Nothing ever came out about it. I'm sure it'll be in an article about him next spring, but I still don't even know what the injury was. He is pitching in Arizona.
With all the time he missed, you would have thought he had like a labrum issue or like Tommy John or something crazy, because he just, like I said, he fell off the face of the earth.
Tommy John would make sense. He missed the second half of last season, I believe. I think he was similar to Reggie, where he missed a chunk.
Yeah. And with Bednar, it almost kind of reminds me of when the Giants got rid of Phil Bickford. If you guys remember the old first-round pick we had, and then they traded him. He debuted with the Brewers, pitched for them for a little bit, and then the Dodgers kind of took a chance on him. And he was another one of those guys. He had all the tools, really good stuff. Just didn't quite have the command to be a full-time starter, and ended up being like a really solid long relief guy, and a guy who could also pitch late in games because of his repertoire. So I could definitely see that with Bednar, with some of these crappier teams that really could use the pitching and just take a chance on a guy. Because it really doesn't hurt them. I mean, if they go and take a chance on a guy like Bednar and it doesn't work out, yes, he'll revert to the Giants, but I mean, there's no real loss there.
That name is like a fever dream, bro. Bigford. I thought he was going to be good.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a MLB arm for a while. I mean, and I think he had some good years out of the pen.
Nothing crazy, but no, I thought he was going to be like good for us.
He had that kind of like wiry frame where like these guys that throw 100 miles an hour, but they're hella skinny, like the Jonah Tongs and
Exactly.
Timmys and all those guys that just throw.
What was his other? What did he get dinged for? PEDs?
I think he got dinged.
Yeah.
I don't think it was pro ball. I feel like he was a college ding,
Mm-hmm.
similar to Wisenhunt.
Because I think he missed some time in the
Webb
Giants organization shortly after getting drafted.
Yeah, I know Webb did.
Yeah. Yep. He did too.
Sure, I'll get a DM about that later. But anyway, yeah, I mean, looking at the list, I would say the only guarantee is going to be Roxby. I do not think they risk that one. He pitched a ton in AAA most of the year. I think he was in AAA this season, and I think he's a candidate to be in the major league pen coming out of spring. So I think he's the one guarantee, and then I think Bednar is going to be the other. And then I don't think they do. I don't think they care enough with Gavello. I don't think they're gonna bog up a 40-man spot. If he gets claimed and he sticks, good for him. I think they want him back, but I don't think they're gonna add him to the 40.
Yeah.
He just moved a little bit too quick through the system this year, in my opinion. And credit to him, he balled out in Sacramento for having just kind of got thrown up there. Not necessarily because he was crazy deserving of all the call up or all the promotions, but because Sac went through times where they just desperately needed some added depth.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, everybody. We're keeping an eye on the Seattle game.
This might be the Tigers' season right here.
They put Jack Flaherty in the game. They got forced into that. And he already walked the first two hitters. And
second or third time this series, they've ran through all their bullpen.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna jump over to the manager talk here in just a minute. Before we do that, appreciate. Oh, he got Blanco. I appreciate all the support everybody has given their channel and all of you guys give us throughout the year. If you're watching for the first time, if you're jumping on, from X or wherever, and you don't already, please jump over to YouTube, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit all the, all that good stuff. Click that bell for notifications. This off season, we've got a ton going on. We are going to continue doing the live shows every Friday. That's a given. We are attempting to do live shows every Monday night with a different prospect. Now, that said, not all of them will end up being live. Unfortunately, we prefer to do them live. We like having everybody have an opportunity to send questions to these guys. Unfortunately, we've had a few where it's just not going to work out timing-wise to do it live. We're going to do it pre-recorded, but you're going to get some pretty big names coming up that are well-known as far as prospects go. I could probably confirm 3. I mean, I kind of gave one of them away earlier.
We can probably confirm like 10 at this point.
Yeah. So you guys are going to have a ton of interviews coming up. We're going to be doing a lot of those, especially as filler right now while we're waiting for the season to end and the off season to actually begin. And there's not a ton to necessarily talk about other than the managerial search. So confirmed for you guys come Monday. This is the one that I will confirm a date and everything for when it'll be released. You guys are going to hear from left-handed pitcher Jacob Bresnahan. That he had, I think he actually won pitcher of the year in the system, and it was well-deserved. He was fantastic.
Jay Brezzy.
Yeah, so if Brezzy's watching, can't wait to talk to you on Monday. He's going to be joining us Monday. We're going to be doing a couple pre-recordings that one is going to be with Jesus Rodriguez. So you'll probably hear from him. And I don't know what day we're going to drop all these, but we're going to spread them out a little bit. But you'll hear from Jesus Rodriguez. When I'll send something in the community in YouTube so people can send some questions in because that's going to be a pre-recorded one. And also you guys are going to hear from Trent Harris. That's another one we're doing this coming week. So for both of those, I will send something out in the community so you guys can send some questions in for us. I think you guys are going to really enjoy both of those. Trent Harris is especially he's a character. When they did the Giant, all the prospects came to San Francisco last year. I remember saying Jeremiah Jenkins and Trent Harris, I want to get those two on. And obviously we had Jank last year. He was a riot. And Harris is going to be a lot of fun. Oh, Gino.
It's gonna be a busy week, to say the least.
Yeah. So shout out Ricky. He's the one pulling all this off. So
I can tell you guys by the end of the offseason, we should have about a third of the top 30 on.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at right now.
I mean, we're already at like 3 of them in like the first 3 weeks, and a couple guys that are on the major league roster hopefully will be joining us. So yeah, that's our goal. We want to have a lot of that stuff for you guys. I enjoy, you guys getting to hear all their stories. Paul, we are trying on Tidwell. Hard guy to get a hold of.
We have shot our shot, believe it.
Yeah, we shoot our shot with everybody. So, if we can get him.
I was going to make a joke, but don't want to throw Ricky under the bus.
Yeah, we don't want to speak too soon on that one. We'll joke if we can confirm that one.
Yeah, Ricky is going way in the weeds. He's putting on his best moves to get some guys. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, so look forward to those. And then also, and we'll really jump in on this in about 2 weeks. We are in the process of working on the first couple of videos that are going to be on the membership side when we drop that. I am going to sync that up with Dan. He's working on the merchandise. When we get the merch site open and the website and everything's going to be open, I don't know if you'll have that at the same time, but when we have those come up, the membership stuff will go live. I'm probably planning on the membership stuff doing November 1st, because I want it to be like right at the first of the month. But if Dan has it ready sooner, it'll be ready sooner. So keep an eye out for all that. We're going to drop a video probably in the next week or two where we fully break down everything that's going to be included with that. If you want, for those of you, like, I don't like hiding stuff behind a paywall most of the time. We're going to be very upfront with what that is going to go toward, what the revenue is for. And all the stuff that's already included with what we do now, you're going to keep getting the live shows, interviews, minor league updates during the season. There's going to be a whole ton of stuff that, like, we already provide. None of that's going to change. There's just going to be additional stuff for people that want to support the channel that way. So yeah, Paul, we're going to try Gavin as well. We've got a few people we're trying, we get who we can get.
Anyone you name, we either tried or are trying,
especially prospects. We're not a minor league channel. We are a Giants channel, but we really like to give the attention to those guys, the big time major league players. As cool as it would be to get some of these guys on the channel, they are presented to Giants fans already in a ton of different mediums. A lot of these prospects you don't get to hear from that frequently. So we really like having an opportunity to let them share their stories with Giants fans. So,
well, I mean, even like last year when we interviewed, Charlie Zacconi and Jacob Christian, they weren't really well known, and then they popped off in their seasons. So
yeah, I would like to point out that almost everybody that joined our show last year had a good year. So if you're a prospect and watching and you just really want to have a good year next season, I'm just saying there is a correlation here.
Yeah, see, there's no such thing as a coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob was one of the best hitters in the California League before he got promoted to Eugene. So that was obviously nice to see him get bumped up a level at the end of the year. And then Charlie, I don't know if you guys saw, but he was like one of 3 guys in the last, I can't even remember how many years it was, to actually hit 20 home runs or more in a season for the Emeralds. Mm-hmm. He ended up finishing with 22. So he had a really nice year and a really hot end to the second half.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I think he hit I want to say it was like 16 or 17 of those after like May 27th. Like he went crazy in the second half or the second part of the year. So,
where is it?
Dingler. What a name.
Yeah. So Charlie Zacconi was the 3rd Emerald to hit 20 home runs or more in a season since the 70s. Like that's no joke. They've had some really big time prospects come through because the Emeralds were an affiliate for the Cubs, and then I think it was the Nationals. It was like one other organization. So they've had some like really legit guys come through there, like Trey Turner. I think they also had like Chris Bryant and all those guys that came through the Cubs system back then.
Yeah.
So
it's a tough thing to accomplish stuff like that because it also means like you didn't get promoted usually.
Yeah.
And he really deserved it. Like he deserved a promotion
Absolutely.
the last month or so of that year. So he would not have reached it had they promoted him when they probably should have. But it's still, at the end of the day, it's still it's an accomplishment that shouldn't be overlooked. And I was happy for him that he did it. I would love to see him hit 20 again next season in Richmond, but if he's hitting that many in Richmond, he'll probably find his way to Sacramento really quickly because they don't like to let guys rot in Richmond that long, especially when they're hitting. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But we're gonna jump right over to the managerial topic where Andrew Baggerly released an article talking about how Nick Hundley has been kind of emerging as the favorite for that job. For any of you that have read that article with the Athletic, Baggerly does kind of make it sound like it's Hundley's job if he wants it. Now, is that the actual case? I mean, I'm not Buster Posey. Last I checked, neither of these guys are. Neither of us are in the room with him. I couldn't tell you for sure, but Baggerly has always been pretty well connected, especially with Posey over the years. I don't think this is an article that he would have put out just out of, for no reason or anything like that. I do think there is going to be some level of truth here. But as we've noticed, they are still interviewing people. I think they confirmed Craig Albernaz is going to be coming in for an interview. Kurt Casale, I think I heard he's going to be coming in for an interview. And Brandon Hyde, the Orioles ex-manager that just got the boot this year, but he did manage them when they had, a handful of really successful seasons in Baltimore. He's coming in for an interview. But it is interesting. Like I kind of wonder, is this a Hundley's the favorite, but we're still interviewing like other candidates to see, or are we doing this while we wait for an answer type situation? And it's his if he wants it. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
Well, I don't know if it was the Baggerly's article or Slussers who mentioned it, but Hundley has supposedly already done multiple interviews for what it's worth. So if it's the latter part of your point, where if you're just interviewing guys while he makes a decision, you'd have to think a decision is coming pretty quickly if he's already done multiple rounds of interviews. But in my opinion, especially to this point that Joaquin makes, you're probably going to see a manager get hired within the next, I'd say, 2.5 weeks. I think that's pretty fair. I believe Bomel was hired, late October last year. So yeah, I think where there's smoke, there's fire, and especially coming from a reputable source such as Baggerly, it definitely sounds like if Hundley wants the job, he's got it. But the Giants are also going to do their due diligence while they wait for him. Guys like Vitello, Albernaz, Suzuki, Casale, guys like that. You're gonna do what's right and get multiple rounds of interviews done with these other candidates in the meantime. So, it wouldn't shock me to see a decision come very, very soon, though.
I will say too, some of these guys that are interviewing, don't be surprised if these are guys that are candidates for bench coaches and stuff like that too, to help fill out the staff. Especially a guy like Brandon Hyde. He is a Bay Area native, so he's a local guy. I don't know if he grew up a Giants fan or whatever like Bomel, but he is a guy that I could see being on the staff just because he could give a new manager like a Hundley, for example, just a little bit of assistance, kind of a la like what we mentioned with Ron Wotus potentially. So I think that's a possibility. And I think that's something that John Shea mentioned in that article when he mentioned them talking to Brandon Hyde. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something to keep an eye out for. especially because with Hyde, I don't really know that he's going to be a super popular candidate for actual manager positions across the league. I mean, we'll see. I mean, the Rangers has been the only one that's been filled so far, but I do feel like a lot of teams are going to end up looking towards other options. So I think that's a real possibility to keep an eye out for.
Yeah. Well, and I think as a career move, like that could be a strong one for a guy like Brandon Hyde if he's not in serious consideration to get a manager job elsewhere. Because if he is, I mean, it would be probably in his best interest to take those interviews and go for that. But just given the inexperience, if the Giants do hire a guy like Nick Hundley, and it's not, inexperience isn't always a bad thing. Like there is some good there, but you do want to surround inexperience usually with some experienced coaches, which is why I think a lot of us would be in favor of a guy like Brandon Hyde getting that job. But if you're Hyde, if you come over and Hundley has a ton of success and you're it's kind of like when Schilt was, I think, was Schilt the bench? No, he wasn't the bench coach, but he was on the staff with Bob Melvin. Like if you have an experienced bench coach, a guy has a ton of success. I mean, you're probably, especially with his managerial experience, he probably won't be here very long. Like he'll probably get a job in the next year or two, following this. So, I think it would make sense as a career move for him. Unless I don't know how many spots out there are really going to have a lot better jobs, especially because the Giants do have a roster that is has a core in place to try and compete here sooner than later, I think. So, the good teams tend to be the ones that get their bench coaches rated. So it makes sense for Hyde.
And like what George says right there, that's why we're making the point that we are. If you could surround, a rookie manager, so to speak, he does have some experience, though. He's not, fresh out of the big leagues. He's got some experience in, the front office role. But for him being a first-year manager, it makes sense to surround him with experience on the bench and within his inner circle directly. So you're not just going in it with a bunch of year ones. You're going to go in it with a year one manager, a year two president of baseball operations, Maniazin, who's got a decade worth of experience, plus bench coaches who have been prior managers, hypothetically speaking. So you're going to make a good, formidable team as far as your coaching staff is concerned.
Yeah. And to Dan's point there about Posey in the front office, look at what Posey surrounded himself with.
Mm-hmm.
Like he added Randy Wynn to help with the load on the farm and all that, but they kept Kyle Haynes around, who's been doing it for a while. They kept all their big international scouting directors who've been doing a fantastic job in recent years, especially if you look at the hauls they brought in on the international market, including the guy that they're about to get this year, who's, by the way, the #1 international prospect. Back-to-back years, because I don't count Roki as coming from Japan playing in pro leagues. Back-to-back years, they're going to get the #1 guy. So he kept all those guys around. He brought in Bobby Evans as an advisor. People can think what they want about Bobby Evans. Dude did it forever. He kept Jeremy Shelley as one of the assistant GMs or whatever role they have him in. Another guy that's been in the front office for 25 plus years, Manazian. He'd done it dating back all the way to like the late 2000s under, was it Doug Melvin was the GM in Milwaukee at the time. He's been in front office roles for 15 years. He put and Hottie Rod from Pittsburgh has been around for a bit, so he brought in a ton of experience. So yes, the guy making the buck stops with Buster, sure, with one minimal experience, but he has a ton around him, and I think you need to kind of insulate a guy like Nick Hundley with that kind of experience on his coaching staff.
Absolutely.
So,
and as far as the rookie manager thing goes, I do want to point out too, if I'm not mistaken, it looks like currently there are only 4 managers in the MLB that are on their second team. Almost every single other manager in the MLB right now got hired on as a first-time manager with no prior managing experience. So That's just something to keep in mind. It's not as big of a deal, at least in the MLB, as it is maybe in other sports. Again, like I've said on previous shows, I think it really comes down to more who you are as a leader in the clubhouse than it does anything else. Because at the end of the day, nowadays, so many teams have multiple guys on their staff, and there's so many guys that are giving input on different things that it's not like the manager's calling all the shots. The GM is involved. In this case, I'm sure Buster's involved to an extent, not necessarily with setting lineups, but with how they want their team to run. Obviously, the hitting coaches are heavily involved. The bench coaches are really running a lot of the game and telling the managers, like, hey, these are your options. And then the manager makes a decision on the spot. So honestly, a lot of it comes down to really what kind of baseball knowledge and experience you have in the game in general. And there's no better spot to pull guys from than the catcher position and guys that have played in the game fairly recently. And that's why, Buster's looking at a guy like Casali, who his entire Giants tenure, like, he called it a great game with pitchers. Like, that guy was always super dialed in on his preparation before games and really knew how he wanted to attack other teams. So that's incredibly valuable. That alone is half of the game right there. So,
yeah. And to Ricky's point, I think they looked at his earlier point about the first-time managers versus guys on their second, third, whatever stop. I do believe in the playoffs, 8 of the 12 managers were first-time managers. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean their first year managing. Obviously, guys like Aaron Boone, it's his first stop being in New York, but he's been there for like 7 or 8 years or whatever at this point. But I think, there weren't very many that were on their second stop. Guys like Schilt and Council, I can think of those two off the top of my head, and I'd have to look at a few others. I guess you could technically count Cora, even though because he left and then came back.
Yeah.
Left.
I wasn't counting him, but it really is only Craig Counsell, who this is only his second stop, and he chose to leave the Brewers. And then you have Francona, who's been around forever, and AJ Hinch. And those are the only other names other than the guys you mentioned.
Who also left.
Yeah, quote unquote. But yeah, all these other guys, they're either very new coaches or guys that are barely coaching for the first time. And I mean, hey, what difference is it hiring Stephen Vogt to Nick Hundley? It was the exact same situation. I mean,
he had 1 year of coaching.
Fresh out of the game. And I mean, hey, at least Hundley was over with Texas in a fairly good organization and, working with a lot of smart baseball people and, gaining some experience from that and kind of seeing baseball from the front office side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They, and to answer George, you said what experienced guy wants to be a bench coach for a rookie manager unless they're selfless and don't want to manage. And a guy with experience, whether it's as a bench coach or a manager that hasn't gotten an offer to be a manager again, like we mentioned with a guy like Brandon Hyde, you're not necessarily trying to get the guy that's going to be tied to his hip forever. A Ron Wotus is pretty rare. A guy that managed that many years, was the bench coach for that many years on successful teams under 3 or 4 different managers. I think it was 3 because I think he came with Dusty and then went Dusty to Felipe to Boch. But a guy that, had been under 3 different managers, tons of success on those teams and never got a job managing, even though he interviewed a bunch. Like, that's rare. Usually you're getting a guy, and it's like when it's like Kyle Shanahan. I'm going to go cross sport here. It's like Kyle Shanahan hiring a defensive coordinator. Do you think he hired Bob Solback just thinking, oh, this guy's going to be my D coordinator for the next 10 years? No, he's probably thinking this guy's going to be my D coordinator for maybe 2 years, and then he's going to get another head coaching job. And then he's going to do what he did, where he tries to get a guy like D'Amico Ryans, who will be there for a year or two. And then he gets another, he might take a job. And you just hope that you don't run into more Steve Wilkes and Sorensens. He's trying to get guys that are good coaches that are going to take jobs elsewhere.
I think that's the biggest emphasis there, especially with a guy like Hyde. And it's 2 points that you guys have already made, but just That's what it's all about. You get a guy like Hyde who's got managerial experience. So what if he doesn't get a manager's offer this year? He's got Bay Area roots, like we've already touched on. You can bring him in as a bench coach to help Hundley for a year or two. It's not like you're going into a terrible team and a terrible organization. This is a team that is, loaded with potential that you can probably make the playoffs as early as next season. You have a great year, and the next round of managerial openings open up after next season. Oh, cool. Brandon Hyde helped us out, for this past season. He did a great job in that role. He's going to interview again. He probably ends a job. Like it's to the points that, the three of us are making, just emphasizing that once more. That's what it's all about. If you're going to bring in a young manager like Nick Hundley in a role, you got to surround him with another coach such as that. And it's not going to be long term. It's going to be for a year, 2 years max.
And George, you're 100% right. None of us are going to predict that he will be. We all like him as a candidate. There are a lot of first-time coaches that have success. There's a lot of first-time coaches that you see for a year and a half, and you're like, this guy ain't cut out for it. Mm-hmm. The counter is there's also a ton of retread coaches out there that are, on their second, third stop that they're just not the answer. I mean, we just went through that with Bob Melvin. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Bud Black.
Mm-hmm. Bud. Yeah, I mean,
Bruce Bochy just got, essentially forced out after pretty much doing nothing, coming off of a World Series in back-to-back seasons. There's tons of examples, and nobody's comparing Hundley to Vogt. All I'm getting at is that
the situation.
We can't pick and choose where we think it's an issue to have a first-time manager, because absolutely nobody was saying, oh, the Giants shouldn't hire Stephen Vogt as their next manager because he has no experience. He was very well liked and very popular amongst, almost every Giants fan I've ran into or, talked to. You see all over the place, all Giants fans were super in favor of it. And then he goes to Cleveland and everybody forgets he's a brand new manager. And everybody's like, man, I wish we would have got him instead of Bob Melvin. Of course, we don't know if it's going to work out that way, but nobody at all was talking about that with Stephen Vogt. So like Cody said, it can go either way, of course. You just don't know.
And here's the thing that nobody's talking about. When it comes down to, wanting a guy with managerial experience, the last two managers the Giants have hired both had managerial experience, and look how that turned out. You had Gabe Kapler, who was a manager with Philly and stunk it up with them, stunk it up with us. You had a guy in Bo Melvin who's been around for 2 decades, who, he won Manager of the Year a couple times 10 plus years ago, and look how that turned out. So if you want to go after a guy with managerial experience, you've already tried that 2 times over the past, 6, 7, 8 years, and it did not pan out. So why not shake it up this time? I mean, that's all I'm saying.
That last sentence right here that George said is all that really needs to be said.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care what your experience is. Get the best coaches. Whatever it is. Like,
and the Bay Area roots thing, he's 100% correct on, because they did those kind of things under Farhan a ton. Yeah. Believe me, we're not saying to hire him because he's a Bay Area native. We just threw that out there that he may want to come on as a part of the staff because he is a local guy.
Yeah. I would want
I haven't done it.
Success he had in Baltimore, not because of his Bay Area roots. I don't care about that.
Yeah. And I'm not even necessarily vouching for Brandon Hyde at all. I'm just mentioning that it is very possible that he's been talking with Buster more to be a part of the staff than just specifically for the managerial position, because Buster may not even be considering that.
Exactly.
For sure. So a couple nuggets that were dropped in this article that Baggerly posted, a couple comments that Posey made about Hundley. Now, some of these, it's actually funny. At the time when I was, kind of pushing for this, I didn't even know some of this stuff. But One of the comments Posey said in 2019, Nick is one of my all-time favorite teammates, one of my best friends. I think that he brings so much on a daily basis. We'd love to have him back for sure. This was after, he had played 2 years there, and then he ultimately didn't re-sign. I did not know that they're like super close friends. That does make the relationship a little bit interesting because I know a lot of people are worried about like don't hire your buddies, which I agree with. But at the same time, like I wanted Hundley like way before I had any clue about that. I figured Posey probably at least respected his work ethic and the way he went about his business. Another comment I've caught with a lot of guys, really fortunate to catch with a lot of great teammates. As far as teammates go, he might be the best one I've ever had. That was Hundley talking about Posey. I felt like there was another comment here that I might just be missing. The general, the gist of the article though does talk a ton about the way Hundley prepared on a daily basis, the way his work ethic overall, and just the attention to detail that he brought, and all these different things, and just how it's a lot of the stuff that you heard Posey talking about, wanting guys that are, obsessed with the details, obsessed with being prepared, obsessed with, just playing the game the right way, which is all these things that we've been asking for. And Hundley, he's always been a little bit more of that kind of hard-nosed player. And I mean, I'm not saying, Ricky's brought this up in the past too. I'm not saying you need to be a red ass like Matt Williams, but I mean, God, we could really use somebody that will just accountability is just the word that I always circle back to, like somebody that will hold the players accountable. When Elliot Ramos is making a billion errors in left field and a bunch of base running mistakes, can somebody hold him accountable? When Tyler Fitzgerald is not in the right position or right spot on batted balls a bunch of times at second base early in the season, then also is getting picked off, can someone hold him accountable? When, I could go down the line here with different players that were having issues throughout the year. I need a manager that's going to do that, because Bob Melvin did not. He was too much of a player's manager. So.
And it's super important, because think of it like, I'm sure a lot of people in here have had those kind of bosses before, where there's the guy that commands respect, and when he says something, everybody shuts up and listens, and even if they don't agree with it, they're going to do it, and they're not going to question it, and they're not going to try to bargain with their boss. And then there's those bosses that are absolute pushovers, and you can kind of talk your way into something. That's essentially what was going on with Bob Melvin last year, and it was very apparent. And I mean, he admitted so as much with the Elliot Ramos situation, where he planned on benching Ramos to give him a day off and reset, and try to, learn from his mistakes and almost punish him a little bit, because it really comes down to accountability. Ramos made the statement that, hey, I went to Bob and said, how am I going to get better if I don't go back out there and try to fix it? Well, you know what? Every now and then when somebody's struggling, whether it's on defense or at the plate, you kind of need a little bit of a reset and just take a step back from the game and to clear your mind, and think about something else, or to step back and, watch how somebody else is attacking, a fly ball or whatever the case may be. It makes you realize, like, hey, I can't just be comfortable and be lackadaisical out in the outfield every day. Otherwise, this guy is going to play over me. Where with Bob, there wasn't any of that accountability. It was like, okay, I don't agree with this decision. I'm going to go make my case, and I'm going to get what I want. It's you can't have that. You have to have accountability. You can't let these guys run the team. Your job is to be a leader and to manage these guys through the ups and downs. And if you're not holding these guys accountable, how are you going to motivate them when things go south? You just can't, because nobody's listening to you. Yeah. So that's really what it comes down to more than anything. And a guy like Hundley, being a catcher for so long, he obviously knows the game. He isn't far removed from the game. He knows the analytics side. That's not going to be an issue with a guy like him. It's not like Hundley's a right fielder who only has to worry about himself. He has to help manage the whole game by knowing exactly what the other team does.
That's why catchers are so widely viewed as like the best candidates for future managers, because they already do so many of the duties. Like there are certain duties that they already do on like a daily basis with preparation and scouting and handling the pitching staff and all these different things. Like they already do like a lot of that. They're keeping an eye on their pitchers while when they're catching. They're keeping an eye on a guy's stuff. They're keeping on how a guy's throwing, his mannerisms, all these things. You know, if a coach comes out there and they're gonna ask the catcher like, "What are you seeing?" And if the catcher's not gonna BS them, they're gonna tell them like, "Yeah, this guy needs to soon." Yeah. Like they're already doing so much of that. So like that's why there is a smaller learning curve for catchers than there are for other positions. Doesn't mean they can't make good coaches. I mean, Craig Counsell's been a really good coach for a number of years, and he's not, he was an infielder. Like it is what it is.
Yeah. And Hugh, if I was to bet on who Atlanta brings in, I would say Mark DeRosa.
Yeah. That's my guess.
The other guy that I could see being very likely going to Atlanta is David Ross, because he played there.
Yeah.
It's a good one,
Paul.
And he's been out of it for a little bit since the whole Chicago thing. So I think that's very likely, and I know he's super interested in that job. So that's another one, and he's another backup catcher, by the way. It's a lot of times it's the backup catchers, funny enough.
Yeah, that's what Bochy was. I mean, that's what I think a lot of people like. Backup catchers, they spend more time preparing their teammates. It's like a backup quarterback. That's why, like, you look at the NFL, look at all the backup quarterbacks who go and become coaches after their playing careers. I mean, number one, because financially they probably need the more money, more than the starters did. But still, like, those are the guys that spent all week helping prepare the starter, and they're doing all this work that they're like, okay, I mean, I already do a lot of the stuff our coaches do. So they go in, they get kind of well regarded in that way.
It's kind of like what they say, like when you watch an NFL game with quarterbacks, how they have to know what everybody's job on the offense is, because they have to set everybody up and tell them where they need to be if they don't know. Same thing with a catcher. They've got to be looking at everything. They've got to know every situation. They've got to, it comes down to all sorts of little things. It's not just knowing how many outs there are. It's knowing where to go. I mean, look at how the Phillies ended their season last night. Their pitcher gets a fairly routine ground ball straight to him. He had 2 outs, bases loaded. He could have gone to any base. And instead of making the throw where the guy is further away from hitting the base, he goes to where a guy already has a lead on him and a running start, because he did not know the scenario. And what was JT Realmuto doing? He was going like this the whole time. Like
that was the worst part of that for me. Is like, it's not like JT was standing there, right? Literally, the catcher is pointing to first base.
That was brutal, bro.
Just such a Dodgers way to win a series. I hated that. I mean, who am I going to complain? The Giants won a game in the NLCS off a dude throwing a bunt down the right field line.
I think Raleigh's about to walk it off right here.
I mean, God, how many times are you going to like set the table for the middle of your lineup just for them to not do anything? And this
reminds me of Giants baseball.
Time.
Oh, there was a point earlier where Cody was talking. I was like trying not to laugh, and I got to mention why Bob Nightingale, of all people, tweeted out, what was it? He's like, we're on to the 13th in a winter take-all classic.
Winter? This is Game of Thrones?
He is the Susan Slusser of national media in the MLB. Like, those two have the worst typos, and to Susan's credit, she does make fun of herself for doing it, so it's kind of funny, but I'm like, Bob Nightingale, I swear.
All right. They're going to have a chance. Yeah, so J-Rod's getting walked.
Mm-hmm.
Polanco, I think, puts the ball in play usually pretty well.
Let me answer this. Bake That Dough says, do you think Buster, at least in part, wants someone without prior managerial experience so that he's multiple and more of a yes person to how Buster wants things done? I would probably disagree to that point, for the reason being that I think Buster wants to bring somebody in to join the trio of he and Manassian for long-term success. I don't think they want to bring somebody in to just kind of, obey their every command. They want to have the same level-headed ideas and strategies on how to succeed long-term for the benefit of the team and the organization as a whole. So I think that's more of a priority in their managerial search, is finding somebody that's vision aligns with the two of theirs, rather than that's willing to just, obey their every wish and command.
Yeah. They've always said like healthy discourse is a good thing, but you do want people that think similarly to you, as far as like if you're going to be tied to the hip with a person, you probably want a guy that has similar views on the type of baseball you want played and the way you want to go about winning. You might disagree on like the overall roster construction or whatever, but like certain players, but you have alignment on the vision of the type of baseball and everything you want.
Mm-hmm.
So,
sorry, I'm locked in on this AB.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say the exact same thing Dan just said. There's pretty much, you want like-minded individuals, so you don't have to question what they're doing. Things are going to be done, because Buster's made it pretty clear that he doesn't want to be micromanaging the manager. Same thing he said with Bob Melvin. Oh man. Same thing he said with Bob Melvin last year. Like, hey, I'm not going to be telling him how to set up his lineup. They did it. Finally.
It's over. It's done. I should have had the GIF, the Frodo GIF, just ready for whenever that happened.
It's so funny that JP Crawford's the one that scored the game-winning run too, because his at-bats pissed me off the most, like the last 2 or 3 at-bats he had, because just horrible situational baseball. He was literally like the epitome of the Giants offense the last 4 or 5 years or whatever.
Yeah. Dude, the guy Farhan would have traded for.
Oh, for sure.
Yes. Like, bro, you have guys on first and second with no outs. You are not a good hitter. You have hit like 250 with no power, and you don't drive in runs. Yeah. Move a guy over. Stop trying to hit a ball over the fence and popping up with your unproductive outs. Like, man.
Drop a bunt, man.
Yes. He did it back-to-back at bats. I'm like, dude.
Terrible.
He's a good defender, but man,
yeah,
have no patience for that. I'm not surprised that Blanco did it though. He's had very good at bats all series.
Yeah, and I think he's a guy that I think he's been around for a long time. He's like in his 30s.
Yeah, they almost let him go in offseason.
Yeah,
we haven't talked about yet tonight. It's a holiday. I didn't wish you guys a happy Brooks Conrad Day.
Yeah, I saw that tweet.
Yeah, I just thought about that.
Forever giant Brooks Conrad.
He just fell off the face of the earth, man.
I can't blame him. I really can't. Sometimes you just cannot recover from something, and that guy had so many big moments for the Braves that year too. That was like the most painful thing about that. He was like awesome for them in like clutch moments throughout the year. Had all these like big moments for the team. Like Braves fans loved him. And then he went full Brooks Conrad in a series. Defensively, it was just brutal.
I was 12 years old when that happened. I'm getting old.
Yeah.
How do you think people are going to feel watching this that were like, dude, I was like 35?
That was a good game, though. Good times.
Yeah.
I think one of his mistakes just completely bailed out Sergio Romo in Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. Because he hit a homer. Yeah, he gave up a bomb, and then that happened and completely bailed him out.
All right, guys. Go ahead. Finish.
Oh, I was gonna say that was a series that could have absolutely gone away with them. I remember that home game against the Braves too, when Ankiel hit one into the cove.
Oh yeah,
That was a brutal one
They
too.
jumped on him early. Burl hit a 3-run bomb. Kane went like 7 shutout innings, and then they just the game in the late innings. That one killed me. They should have been up 2-0, and it was like, God.
Seattle or Toronto? Give me Seattle.
Who am I rooting for, or who do I think is going to win this series?
Yeah, I'm rooting for Seattle, but Blue Jays probably pull it off.
Kind of where I'm at.
No.
Yeah.
I will say this, 2 extremely different clubs in the way
Very
they
much
play.
so.
Yes.
Mariners, I think, have a very clear advantage as far as top to bottom pitching. I think Toronto's got a few guys that can kind of match up a little bit. They don't have anybody like Skubal. Like, I like Gossman, but Gossman's not Tariq Skubal. Like, let's be real. But they've got, they've got some solid pitchers in Toronto, but top to bottom, Mariners are way better. But Toronto's offense is significantly more consistent than the Mariners offense. The Mariners offense has some dudes that can do things, but I feel like the Mariners offense is like a bunch of individual parts, and the Toronto offense feels like a sum of its parts, where like they have a lot of good players that work well with each other. So I could see it being a really good series. I could see Toronto just like putting up a crap ton of runs, and I could see like this series going a whole bunch of ways, but I'm rooting for the Mariners.
I'll tell you what I don't want to see. I don't want to see another 15-inning game. I'm sorry.
Dude, we almost finished the show before the game.
Yeah.
After pushing it back to try and let the game end before we did it.
When we started, it was already in like what, the 11th?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Mariners were about to come up in the 11th, or the Mariners had hit in the 11th, and we were like, oh, we'll let it go. And
bro, you guys were sending me updates while I was cutting my hair, and since then I showered, I walked the dog, I came back in, I got the green room set up, we watched 2 innings, did a whole live show, and it just ended.
Oh man, it's crazy. But congrats to the Mariners.
Polanco would be a nice signing. He is a little bit older. It'd be very much like a very short-term deal, but at 32 years old, or 31 this year, he had 26 bombs, only struck out 82 times and walked 42 times. 134 OPS plus. So pretty legit offensive season for him.
Do you think we can trade for LeBron to pitch and hit bombs? Yeah, it was such a good question to ask it twice, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing with LeBron is if he gets hit, he's gonna flop and think that automatically gets him to third base.
Yeah. You know who I have, like, I can't stand him, and he was terrible on the broadcast, was AJ Pierzynski. And Snow posted a comment where he was like, oh, you were like one of the most hated teammates. I'd love to be on Digital Talk to talk about it. It just killed me, dude. And I will say this about AJ, because this is kind of to the LeBron point here. AJ is still the only player I have ever seen in Major League Baseball flop on defense. Especially as a catcher. That alone will make me hate a dude forever. Like, I can't. That nothing to do even with his horrible Giants career. The 1 year he was here, just he flopped as a catcher. I just can't. In a playoff game. Terrible.
Yeah, I couldn't stand that dude. And mind you, I was a kid when he was on our team.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, this is a legitimate discussion. I think he's still thinking about it. He's got some young kids. One of them is type 1 diabetic. And he has a 12-year-old that is. So I do think that is what the current holdup is. I think he is deciding if he wants to do it. And it's not to me, and I know we had a whole discussion in our group chat the other day where it's like, will he be 100% in if he takes a job? And I think if he takes a job, he will be 100% committed, giving it his all. but this is the time for him to have these conversations with his family about what that would entail. So something to, something to keep in mind.
That's a good point.
I mean, they are used to the ghost runner, but also like at the same time, you play 9 innings of normal baseball every day. Like maybe there's more urgency, but
and the other thing is like, how many times did each team start with runners on first and second? I mean, other than the double play being there, I mean, that's about as good as it gets with no outs too. So they put themselves in the same situation as a ghost runner, and teams are stubborn and are absolutely against bunting guys over.
Yeah. I mean,
like
the second, I think it was the 10th inning, the Mariners had a leadoff double with JP and then Randy. I'm like, bunt, dude. Like, have JP bunt. You get Randy up there. They're going to 4-finger salute Randy over to first to try and set up a double play. And then you got the guy that might win the MVP, Cal Raleigh, on deck. What are we doing?
Now, Cody, you're talking like it's 2010, all right?
It's talking like it's the 150 years of baseball that got played before all the nerds took over. Like, I'm sorry.
It's such ridiculous thinking because we're in a day and age where everybody bats their best hitter either 1 or 2 nowadays. And if you're not going to put them in the middle of the order to be in good run producing situations, why are you not having the bottom of the order play small ball? Why is JP Crawford an absolute freaking middle of the road hitter getting to just swing out of his ass every time with runners in scoring position with no outs and a chance to win the freaking game? Move the guys over to second and third. Get yourself out of a double play. Give yourself a chance to hit a fly ball to win the game. Like, this is crazy.
Joe says get rid of the ghost runner completely in the regular season. Yeah, I mean, I'm cool with that. I'd be all for getting rid of the Manfred runner. I'm honestly, if they wanted to add it after like the 12th inning, I'd probably be like, I don't care at this point, because I do agree with the point of like, who wants like a 20-inning game in the middle of June?
I've been to a handful of those, man. Not 20 innings, but I've been to a couple 15-inning games.
Yeah. I've been to 2 games that went 14 innings. Shout out Freddie Sanchez, walked off one of them. I remember that in 2011. I've been to another game in Oakland that I think Eric Burns might have hit a walk-off in like the 15th. It was like a walk-off homer back when he was with the A's. Like, I've stuck around for a few of those. They are long freaking games.
Yeah.
Now with the pitch clock, it's like it probably wouldn't even be that bad, but still long.
Nobody. I say 34-27 Niners. It'll be a high-scoring game.
Yeah.
A lot of injuries for both teams.
Yeah. Who wins tomorrow between Brewers and Cubs?
Milwaukee.
I'm going to... Okay, disclaimer. Neither team has announced a pitcher.
Yeah.
So I don't even know who's pitching in this game. But...
They're doing that that Office meme. Remember when they're just like...
Yeah. They're going to announce it like at first pitch. Just who trots out there. Oh, man. That's hilarious. Sorry. We can manager that hits Chapman 7th, and when he's hot, hits 250 and he can hit 6. Yeah, I mean, we've said forever we want him 6th or 7th. Like, that's... I would not care about him hitting 230 with 25 plus bombs if he's hitting 6th or 7th. That would be acceptable at that point. Still don't love him on $25 million, but I would. You're already doing it now, so it is what it is. I could see that. I didn't look that closely at who pitched. I know Freddie pitched for Milwaukee, so I know it won't be Freddie.
That'd be...
If that's the matchup, I'm definitely leaning towards the Cubs for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. They jumped on Imanaga last start in Milwaukee. It's not a favorable place for him to pitch. That's for sure.
Yeah.
His fly ball tendencies, but I think that probably is all we've got for today. Like we said, make sure you guys check out the Charlie McDaniel interview last Monday. That was a really fun one. Especially listen for Charlie's really fantastic pregame rituals. That was pretty interesting. So check that out. We like we mentioned earlier, Jacob Bresnahan. We're gonna have him on Monday night. Listen for that. We're gonna have a couple that we drop with Trent Harris and Jesus Rodriguez. We'll be dropping those sometime probably next week. One of them might be the following week because we're going to try and space them out. I'm not going to just dump all of them on the same day. So keep an eye on for that. And then in the next week or two, we'll probably put out a video. Whether it's maybe it'll be on the live show. I don't know. We haven't really decided, but we'll probably put something out discussing the drop of the merch stuff and the website and all that stuff. So we'll see where we're at on that, but we will try and let you guys know, keep you informed on that because it's coming soon. Looking forward to it. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yes, sir.
You guys got anything you want to add before we wrap this thing up?
No.
All I gotta say is the second the manager news breaks, and if it is Nick Hundley, like Cody predicted 2 years ago, and that the three of us have been vouching for the last year and a half, I will be puffing a cigar and sipping some champagne with a shirt that says "We told you so."
I'm gonna pull a Shasky. I'm just gonna be like, "Let's go." My daughter's asleep, so I can't yell, but let's go.
It's comical.
It's one of my favorite videos. I was like, dude, I've never related more to a podcaster in my life because I'm like, it's literally me during a Niner game. The Niners score a touchdown, and my daughter would be asleep on my wife's chest or something, and we're all just like, yeah. It's so funny.
Marcatna, yes, that is in the works as well. So once the membership program and the website launch, that's also going to be included with all that. Cody will dive more into that on his video that he releases.
Yeah. There is going to be a Discord. It is part of what is included. And we will all be in there. You'll get more unfiltered.
Oh, you guys
you guys
we're gonna
don't
get canceled.
You have no idea.
Get canceled.
You think I'm bad on here? This is 6% of what you're gonna get on Discord. You wait and see.
Kapler food reviews coming back. Hey, you know what? To wrap the show up, I'm gonna quote the great philosopher Gabe Kapler for all of you guys.
I know what you're gonna say.
If you're ever if you're running behind and you just need to get somewhere quicker, just walk faster. And on that note, have a good one, everybody.
I hated that stupid idiot.